Well, I mean, first of all, we're a VR media company, so our end product is a VR experience. But to create that experience, we need the tools. So we've built the tools to capture those experiences. And so we built our own camera. That was very challenging. Building a virtual reality camera that can see in 360-degree, high-resolution, stereoscopic is very difficult. But we did, and it's been very successful. It's called the Jaunt 1 camera. Well, I mean, when we started, we looked at the Oculus and we thought, this is amazing, it's incredible, it's going to really revolutionize gaming. But we're not gamers, so we really focus on entertainment. And then a year later, Google came out with Google Cardboard. And that has actually really opened up the market for us. It made VR accessible for anyone, very cheaply. If you have a phone, you can have a viewer. Actually, I have a viewer with me here, I'll show you. This is one of my favorite ones. Just pop it out, put it in your phone, and you have a virtual reality device, just like that. Now, that means you now have a mass market. You know, there's 7 billion people in the world. They're all going to be carrying smartphones. And that's a very different market than the headset market, which is very much more aimed at people who are very committed to VR. We're more interested in people who are sort of interested in VR and want to like have a fun experience that isn't maybe too long or too big of a commitment. And that's worked very well for us. Well, so VR and augmented reality are very different things. So VR, you don't need to be nearly as accurate or as correct as you need to be for augmented reality, because augmented reality, you're mixing the real world and the virtual world. And that's a very challenging thing to do, and you need, a very different display device, you need, smaller headsets, you need different optics. There's a few companies working on these, like the HoloLens, and Magic Leap. They are going to require different content. It's not just single point of view stereoscopic video that we're doing today, but they're going to need light field videos. And the challenge with those is that they're very big. They're going to be hundreds of megabytes per frame, right? At 60 frames per second, that's prohibitively expensive today. So we're going to have to invest in the technologies for compression and rendering of those light fields. And that's, that's coming down the line. Well, that's always a difficult question, right? I mean, and on the one hand, you need to be very focused because you don't have a lot of resources. And we've been lucky that we got very good venture financing. So we have a little bit more scale than most companies. So we can do both the hardware, software, services, as well as we have a studio in LA for producing content. So there's, it's a very multifaceted environment. And personally, I find it intellectually challenging and very, very interesting. It's much more interesting than some of my previous startups, which are very much like software, This is much more fun because I get to talk to artists, I get to talk to directors, but I also get to build hardware. So we were very lucky. Our timing was very good. So we came up with the idea after trying out the Oculus and decided that we wanted to focus on entertainment. So the first thing we wanted to do is build a camera to record something, and that's how we basically got started on this path of entertainment. And a year later, Facebook acquired Oculus and Google announced Cardboard, which both were perfect timing for us. So we were able to raise more money at that point. And since then, it's just been going better and better. I mean, virtual reality is still gaining a lot of momentum. There's a lot of companies working on it. It's got a lot of push behind it. And that's very exciting. I mean, we're one of the best funded, oldest VR companies, and we're only 2.5 years old. Oh, wow. Well, I mean, what would I like to invent? I mean, I'm very excited about personal transportation. Like self-driving cars. I have a Tesla. I love the fact that it has some of the early features of that. But I think that's going to really revolutionize society because it's going to reduce the waste that cars create and the pollution that cars create. So I think that's a very important development. There's lots of other very interesting things, but I've got too many hobbies. That's my problem.
And what is your dream scenario for Jaunt? Is there an exit you want to take?
Well, we want to first establish a market in VR and grow, I'd like to produce some content just like Game of Thrones. Something that people say, "Wow, this is what I've always imagined cinematic VR to be like," and something that everybody's got to see. And we're working on that. Yeah. We get that question a lot. Like, what would it take to create Silicon Valley in Switzerland or Silicon Valley in Holland or Silicon Valley somewhere else? And I think it's a lot of different factors. I mean, it's not just the availability of money, but it's the availability of risk capital. The people need to be willing to bet, right? And that's, traditionally banks or financiers are not interested in a bet. They are interested in, getting their money back, getting a return on their investment. So that's a very different way of thinking. Plus, I think that, the people, the employees need to be willing to take a bet. To be an entrepreneur means taking risk, and sometimes that is not part of the psyche of the population. It depends. I always tell people what you need to focus on are the things that you're good at, right? So, Switzerland, when I think Switzerland, I think security, I think banking, I think, insurance. These are areas that I think Switzerland could be very good at, and they could be the Silicon Valley of finance, for example. So one of the things that I'm very excited about is sort of, custom manufacturing, like 3D printing. I mean, there's a revolution happening in 3D printing, just as sort of at a hobby level. But soon the first, affordable metal printers will come out, and it will really change the way we do manufacturing. We'll be able to print a phone, or print the parts for a phone, or print the parts for a drone. And it's going to sort of accelerate the maker movement even more. I mean, we were able to build our first cameras because of 3D printing. We use plastic, right? But if we had access to a metal printer, we would have built our current cameras, in our office, right? That's unthinkable. It's going to really change the way we do manufacturing. And it's also going to allow for very custom hardware. Right? I can build, 10 of something rather than 10 million. I mean, typically, hardware manufacturing is only efficient if you go to large volume. But if you go with 3D printing and custom manufacturing, automated manufacturing, you could do everything can be custom. And that's going to revolutionize things. Another area that I think is incredibly promising is machine learning. There's so much happening in machine learning. I mean, my background is in AI from the 80s, and in the 80s it was laughable. I mean, we couldn't do anything. And now, your phone can recognize objects and things and people and drive you around the country. I mean, it's amazing what's possible.
Ms. Van Hoff, thanks very much for your time.
Thank you.